to That Gray Area. I'm Erinn.
And I'm Vanessa. We're lifelong friends entering that certain time of life that can be a bit of a gray area.
We'll be taking a look at what being a woman and aging looks like right now. So join us in
That Gray Area. Hi, everybody. Hi, Erinn.
Hello.
Welcome to That Gray Area. Today, we're taking a little bit more of a serious tone. We try to keep that gray area pretty lighthearted.
Even when we're talking about serious stuff.
Yes, but today it's a serious episode for both of us. So we're going to talk about forgiveness.
Ooh.
Exactly. Obviously, forgiveness is important at any age, but as we get older, it could get, I would say, more complicated and more important.
Yeah, indeed. Well, it's funny that you say it gets more complicated because one of the interesting things I read, it says studies show that it gets easier to forgive as we age.
I feel like my forgiveness is complicated.
I would say, knowing you, you've become much more forgiving.
She knows me better than I know myself, which is one of the things I've really been learning doing this podcast.
That I know you better than yourself?
Erinn has a lot of insights into me that I don't have into myself, which I think is true for any set of really close friends or people who are close to each other. But
for sure.
Yeah, you often surprise me with things that you know about me that I didn't know.
I love that. You're welcome. So why is it easier to forgive as we age? Well, one is, I thought this was sort of sad actually. You actually have fewer interactions with people as you get older. Well, it's true. I mean, think about it in our 20s. Our circle of friends was massive.
Yes.
And then you kind of pair off. You start a family and, my ring always knocks. Sorry, everybody. You sort of, I don't know, to me, you get a little more discriminating in who you're spending your time with.
Fuck yeah, your time's limited. Like, you work all day. Then at the end of the day, you try to spend time with your kids or your significant other. And then whatever superfluous time is left on top of that, it's precious.
It's fucking very precious.
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste my time on some Yahoo. Yeah. And
some Yahoo being like your cousin. Like,
sorry, cuz.
Not your cousin specifically.
I ain't got time for no Yahoos in my life. But it says also when we age, we do have negative interactions, but we don't get as upset easily, or we don't interpret them as bad as much as we would when we were younger. Would you agree that's true?
Yes. I mean, you've known me forever. I was the queen of holding grudges.
You were the queen of I'll punch a bitch, or I'll cut a bitch.
Oh, that too.
Golly gee. I think what it is, this is off the cuff here. This is not something I thought about previously, but I would say your ability to self-reflect, let your defenses down, and what you said and I think this is a really great statement that we should hashtag am I seeing this right? Your ability to hashtag am I seeing this right has allowed you to have a lot more forgiveness. So well done.
Thanks.
Life well lived.
Thanks.
To this point.
But to your point that you wrote down, like, we've lived so much life that you've had enough experiences to reflect now that not one fucking person that you love or care about is perfect.
No.
I'm certainly not. No one I know is. And so when someone stupid does something that annoys me, it's so easy to let go because I know it's not about me. No one's bullshit is about me.
Very rarely.
No.
Very, very rarely.
Yeah. When I'm upset at a car on the freeway, it ain't ever about the car on the freeway. It's about my own shit that I'm spinning in my brain, and homeboy who cut me off in the BMW is just the victim of my finger.
They're always driving a BMW.
I'm sorry, BMW drivers out there, but you're dicks!
My husband drives a BMW. For real. But you said something to me once that I've always thought about, and is if we were all judged for the rest of our lives on our worst day, we'd all be screwed.
Oh, we'd be fucked.
You know, I don't know. So we'll talk later about are there things that are unforgivable. But I feel, me personally, I used to wish I could stay mad longer.
It's true. We're so the opposite that way.
I think the reason I felt that way, though, because for me, I do feel this actually, that was a reflection of my lack of boundaries and my lack of self-respect, that I often loved what I saw in another person more than I loved myself. So I allowed them to walk over my boundaries time and time and time again. So part of my growth has been saying, I love you, but what you are doing is unacceptable. And I love myself enough to say that's not okay. It doesn't mean I won't
listen to that again, friends.
That's
some powerful shit.
I turned 52 recently, and that is some hard fought knowledge. And just loving myself, really, really loving myself, is that I
valuing yourself as much as those you love.
Indeed. So I used to think that it was about staying mad longer, but that was honestly, as I'm thinking about, that's a manipulation.
Oh, for sure. When I was a kid, I mean, you know me, I was the biggest grudge holder of all time. I would go weeks without speaking to my father, and I would very easily cut people out of my life if they hurt me or pissed me off. Like, you're just done. You're gone. I grew up an only child most of the time. I am very comfortable by myself and alone. And so I will cut you out of my life so you never hurt me again.
You're dead to me.
You're
dead to me.
You'd think I was Italian and came up with that phrase myself, but
you're Sicilian.
I'm Sicilian.
How did I make it this long?
I'll cut you out because you're so wonderful to me.
Oh, God.
Because you've always loved me.
You're sweet. You're
true.
very, very sweet. But I think
I grew out of it. P.S.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
She helped me. Erinn really helped me with that.
And I feel that you probably helped me stick up for myself. And, so good for us. So we are supporting this fact. But you have to read the fun fact.
Okay.
Because this is an interesting fact about your ability to be forgiving or not.
And this is really fun for me because I'm really sweet and cheerful and mostly positive all the time.
Yes.
Oh, like very few people see my dark side. Erinn sees my dark side.
And I love it.
She gets a little bit giddy.
I love it.
So does my sister.
I love it so much.
My sister gets real excited when I'm not nice because it's such a rarity. But my boyfriend is a complete fucking curmudgeon. And it's hilarious that we're so opposite that way. So this fun fact supports us. Okay, so it says the amount of agreeableness you have as compared to the amount of neuroses you have is an indicator of how forgiving you can be. Agreeableness is how much someone feels the need to do and say things that help them get along with others. Neuroticism is the degree to which someone feels negative emotions like stress, anxiety, fear, and sadness in response to life events. So be agreeable and get your neuroses in check, people.
That was my note.
Erinn wrote that at the end. It's very true. Like, I don't let anything bother me on the freeway. I mean, I drive like I'm an invisible bubble, like the Jetsons, and I'm just coasting through the air by myself. I don't even notice other drivers.
I have to say, sometimes, you don't know this about me and you, sometimes when we drive together, I literally want to scream. Because you are so non-aggressive.
Oh God, no.
And sometimes like, oh my God, get around that motherfucker. I get so
my boyfriend's the same way.
Irritated. I get so I've never.
Well, I am hearing this for the first time right now, folks.
Because you're just like, you're so much like my sister. You're just like, you got your tunes, and you might be in the slow lane a lot. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. We
totally digress.
But yes, the neuroses, your degree of neuroses and agreeableness.
I'm so fucking agreeable.
I just think that's fascinating to me.
It is, and I don't want anybody to think that neuroses is used in the negative term, like, oh my God, you're neurotic. Neuroses is used more in the scientific term. Yeah, but it can be it can have a really big negative connotation, but in this case,
yeah. And I also, in a way, when I read those things about, your degree of what you feel, stress, anxiety, fear, or sadness, oh gosh, that's too bad, buddy. Sorry, I am somebody who has suffered from a lot of sadness, anxiety, stress, and fear in my life, and so I feel you. But, one of the things I did like, as we're trying to stay, a little bit on that gray area.
We're working hard to stay on topic, you guys. We just get
hard.
so chatty with each other.
Do.
And we just...
Yes, as you get older, you tend to be able to forgive more. You are less likely to be depressed and stressed and help me.
Well, what's funny that you wrote down here in doing your research for this episode is that you're less likely to report depressive symptoms.
Yeah.
Even if you felt unforgiven by someone else, if you're likely to forgive.
See, now, that to me,
If someone was mad at you and they didn't forgive you, you'd lose your fucking mind.
No, I can't stand it.
You can't.
If my husband is mad at me and needs space, I'm okay now. Like, all right, fine. We don't have to talk for a day or two.
But she
an
talks
hour.
to me about it.
Yeah, and like I remember a big turning
I'm not
point.
okay with it either, P.S.
I can't handle it.
No.
But I've kind of, one thing I have, and it's not really forgiveness, but I've kind of gotten okay a little more when somebody doesn't like me. I'm like, oh.
That's a hard one.
You don't like me.
Well, you're confident enough in yourself now, and this comes with age. Thank you. One of the good things about aging is that you realize your worth.
Hopefully. Yeah,
You're like,
hopefully.
I've parented people magnificently. I've been an excellent employee. Yeah. I'm a kind person. I still have the same friends I had 30 years ago. I ain't doing too bad.
You're doing
so
all right.
if you don't like me, that's on you.
I just figure, can't like everybody. I don't like everybody.
I don't like everybody.
Although, P.S., I'm always like, God, I can't believe you don't like me. I'm really nice.
I'm the same way.
I'm sort of shocked by it. What a stuck-up bitch.
No, do you know how fucking hard I work for people to like me? Like, you better get on board.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about.
I've got my own neuroses surrounding people pleasing. That's another episode.
Seriously, neurosis would be great because we could go off on a whole other tangent, which we will not.
So I'm going to tell you my theory behind this, and you're all going to think I'm a wackadoo, and it's okay, and I don't care. But
do I know this theory?
You may have heard it once or twice.
Okay, bring it.
So there's an author named Ainsley somebody, and they wrote a book called The Instruction, and it's a little bit voodoo for some people, but I believe in reincarnation. I believe that in the third law of thermodynamics, which states that energy can never be destroyed. So where does our energy go when we die?
And where did it come from before we were born?
Thank you. I believe it goes to and comes from collective consciousness. So I believe that we get reincarnated over and over again, and I believe the Earth is sort of like a school, and we come here to learn lessons, and then we die, and we get reborn again at another point, and we learn new and more valuable lessons. So there is a theory, and you could say it's similar to a caste system, but maybe not as extreme, but that as you get reborn, you are reborn with the knowledge you had in each previous life. So I feel like the more time you have spent here and the more you have experienced, the easier it is for you to be of a more evolved nature in regard to all things.
Okay.
And so I think that people who are just, I'll never forgive you, I'm mad, and rageful.
They're kindergartners.
They are. They're kindergartners in the scheme of life. And maybe somebody like Martin Luther King or Gandhi would be like a grad student.
Well, but what if you didn't, I'm down with that hoodoo voodoo. There's part of me.
A lot of people are going to listen to this and be like, what the fuck?
Hey, you don't have to agree with it. Because what I was thinking as you were saying that, is even if you don't believe in reincarnation, you could believe in, are you somebody who is dedicated on a regular basis throughout your life to questioning, asking questions about yourself, your path, like being to growth, just to growth. So that's a cosmic example of growth to me. But if you don't believe that, and I know there's a lot of atheists out there, or agnostics, or
I'm an agnostic,
or Catholics who aren't on board with the reincarnation thing. But even on a much just, you get this one life, what are you doing with it? Are you committed to a life of growth? And that growth, I'm not preachy. Growth can look like so many different things to so many different people, but just not sitting, I'm unhappy where I am, but I'm not really willing or prepared to do anything about it because that change will be painful.
Or scary, or unknown.
Yeah. The unknown is probably the biggest. So I do believe I do believe that. But I also think that even if you don't.
I think that's the magic sauce into why you and I have a happy life. I'm just going to straight out say it. Because we've always been dedicated to growth. I don't know why.
I don't know.
But we're both that way.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was interrupting you. I apologize. I personally just don't know any other way to be. And I don't see how, if you are committed to growth, I don't see how you will have an unhappy life. I mean, I'm not saying, look, I've lived a great life. I've had bad things happen to me. I've had, which we will discuss. Oh, I got like a little queasy in my stomach when I said that. That was really weird.
You had a little visceral reaction to what you know you're going to talk about.
But even so, what do you always say? You have the best saying. It's either going to teach you.
Yeah, everything is either works out or it's a lesson.
Yeah.
And both are so good.
And I'm like, I don't want to be obnoxious and be like, there are people out there in this world who have suffered so horribly. But you know what? There's so many examples of people who have suffered horribly and have been able to forgive.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is such an integral part of that, because if you're going to take every bad thing that happens to you, every bad word that's spoken to you, and internalize it and turn it against yourself,
and let it fester and become a wound, and let someone else's opinion of you or a reaction to what you've said, done, let that take you out of your joy, that's your fault.
Yeah.
Once you're an adult, that's your fault. You know, there's a famous Native American theory that says whatever happened to you in your childhood happened to you. But once you're an adult, you're responsible for the healing that's going to take.
Absolutely.
And I agree with that. You know, I haven't had some of the tragic things that other people have had to happen to them, but I would say that my relationship with my father growing up was very painful to me.
Well, let's talk about that. We're skipping a little bit of ahead, but I think we can go back to what forgiveness isn't.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a really good segue, because part of why we wanted to do this episode is just because forgiveness is important to us, and it was a topic that came up really organically outside of the podcast, and we were like, gosh, there's some really interesting things we could talk about. So when you say, well, nothing bad happened to me, don't downplay your journey and your experience and how you let something that you thought was painful or that you experienced as painful, how you were able to turn that around, because that's inspiring to me.
Oh, thanks.
It really is. It's really inspiring.
So I'm going to get into it and
do it.
I'm going to pontificate here for a while, and you're just going to have to let me.
It's a good story. It's a great story.
Okay, so I was raised by two incredible people. Like, my mom is incredible, and my dad was an incredible human. However, my dad was raised in a household riddled with abuse. His parents were both raging fucking alcoholics. They would, either one of them at any point would disappear for weeks at a time, leaving my father, who was the second of four children, 2 boys who were oldest and 2 girls who were little, leaving my father in charge of taking care of them. So his older brother, who was like 12 at the time, would just take off and leave. And my 7-year-old dad would be responsible for feeding the 2 babies and clothing the 2 babies, while his parents were in like alcoholic rage comas. So essentially my dad would steal clothes off clotheslines and steal milk off other people's porches at 7 and 8 years old in order to feed his sisters.
He was doing the best he could.
He absolutely was. And the fact that he was able to do that at that age is mind-numbing. So he grew up in rural Arkansas, just poor as shit. And he worked since he was like 7 or 8 years old. So finally he'd had enough of his abusive alcoholic father, like beating the shit out of him one Christmas morning. And so he ran away with his best friend to California when he was 14.
Crazy.
He never finished middle school. And because of that experience in his life growing up, he had a lot of personal issues, as one would imagine. You know, these
How
were not the
could you
days,
not?
right? These were not the days of therapy. These were not the days of talk about what's happening with you, you know, whatever. So I 100% at this point in my life acknowledge that my father did the absolute best he could. But when I was little, I was just ignored. I was just completely ignored, or I was a nuisance and I was dismissed. So me being really extroverted and born outgoing and wanting to be in everybody's Kool-Aid in my household, like I couldn't wait to be around everyone. I would just
social butterfly.
For sure. So there were always people around. There were always people in my house growing up. And I remember just being like the only kid in the space and just getting fucked with by people. And at one point, my dad's friend was just completely shit-faced and thought it'd be really funny to handcuff me to a chair because apparently I was like following them around. I was like 7. And they forgot about me and took off. And I was like stuck there.
And you probably bottled that up and said it was fine.
Well, I was little. Yeah. You know, I didn't know. I was probably crying.
Oh,
you know?
Sorry.
And I just remember my mother being furious, and they thought it was hilarious because I was, you know, wouldn't leave them alone because I just wanted attention so bad. I just wanted somebody to pay attention to me. And, sorry.
Don't be sorry. We told you it was going to get serious.
I know. So, you know, there was just a lot of stories like that where I remember seeking out my father's attention and him being just so consumed with erasing his ugly past by drinking and having a good time. You know, my dad was a raging alcoholic and an avid drug user. And the only person he really loved was my mother. So I knew he was capable of love and affection, but just not toward me.
I think he loved you. I think he was incapable of expressing that love. Looking at my own dad.
I'm sure
yes.
that maybe at that time that's true.
Yeah.
Because when my sister came along 11 years later, he had time to grow up, right?
Yeah.
And so I watched him give her the love and affection I didn't get from him.
Yeah.
And so by the time my sister came around when I was 11 or 12, I already hated him.
Sure.
I was already like, you're useless to me. And my mother would just sort of protect me from him and be the mediator between the two of us.
And that started your pattern of cutting people out.
Oh yeah.
Because you had to harden your heart. You had to protect yourself.
Yes.
How could you not?
Yes. Oh, that's correct.
Little Vanessa.
Don't feel too bad for me. But you know, and in his own, like I'm not saying it was horrible all the time. When my dad felt like he deigned to give me attention, he was great. Yeah. You know, but during my childhood, I had a half brother from my dad's previous marriage, and during these formative years, from when I was like 10 to 14, my half brother moved in with us, and he had a volatile relationship with his mother. And my brother was really hurt by all of that, and so he came in with a giant chip on his shoulder, and I came into that relationship with my brother with like, you and I have both been hurt by him. I love you. Can you love me? Oh, you know, and that. So we got really close while he lived with me. And then my dad just got to be too much, and my mom got to be too much for him because my mom was incapable of understanding why he was so mean to my dad. You know, and I got it. Yeah. But so he ran away when he was 16, and we never heard from him again for many years. And so that was really hard. You know, I finally get this person into my life that I love and care about and who is great and funny on your and team. Someone on my team. It was like me against him, and now I had my brother against him, and he just had enough. He was like, I can't deal with this dude. I'm out of here. And we thought he ran away back home to his mother, but he ran away and lived on the streets rather than lived with my volatile dad. And that says a lot. You know, that says a lot about what was going on there. He was just very quick to be cruel with his words. He was constantly commenting on my weight. He was constantly commenting on if I wore too much makeup. He was just picking me apart. There was never any words of encouragement or love. Yeah. I got that from my mom. Thank God.
And you know, it's like so much, I think, when people are projecting onto you, it's like they have so much self-loathing inside of them that picking on you is like it's almost like the release valve. Psst, psst, psst. You let off that pressure. You know what I mean? It's like, it's weird. It's like that lashing out in a weird way deflects and releases all that pain your dad was in. And that doesn't take your pain away at all. But I feel like you were that target for him to deflect from his very deep pain. You know?
Maybe. There was little parts of me that also thought that my dad was jealous when my mom would pay attention to me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, right?
For sure.
Because men do that.
Men can be that way.
My ex-husband did that, so that makes sense. But so what happened was, I distanced myself from my dad throughout my whole teenage years and late teenage years. He was somebody who lived in my house with me, and when I grew up and had kids, the first thing I remember telling my ex-husband is that my kids will never spend time with my dad. Because I never wanted his vitriol to infiltrate their life. And he used to say, and even, he used to say terrible things to me about how I was raising my kids. He would like want me to like teach them how to fight. and I was like, Dad, like they're 7,
and they're not living and then stealing milk and diaper and clothing.
Exactly.
They have a loving home.
They have a loving home with parents who care about them. But, and he would say, you're going to make them sissies. You're going to make them suckers. You're not preparing them for the real world. And I was like, Dad, the real world's out there. I need to make sure that they have a safe place. The real world will teach them what it's all about without me interfering. I need them to know that when they're here with me, they're safe.
Of course.
And he didn't even get that. But this is neither here nor there. So, cut to, I've distanced myself from my dad. I don't really have much of a relationship with him other than the obligatory times when I want to visit my mom or when it's a holiday. Mm-hmm. And I have my kids. I'm raising my kids. My kids are amazing. And I read this book. And it's called The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls.
So good. Highly recommend it.
They made a movie out of it with Bree Walker and Woody Harrelson. And it was great, but it's no movie's a book, right? No movie's a book. So much better.
Sorry,
and seriously, and it's Jeanette Walls' autobiography of her experience with her very loving yet crazy father. And I related to so much because I constantly sought out my dad's love and didn't get it. And he had this big giant life of dreams and what ifs and this sort of mentality that just always took him outside of us and away from us. And that was a similar theme throughout her book. She wrote and expressed in many ways that I eventually got that was like, you can love someone and be very disappointed in them at the same time.
Isn't that amazing?
And I, for whatever reason, up until I was 41 years old when I met her, I didn't know this. And so one of the quotes from the book that always stuck with me that I posted on the anniversary of my dad's death, and I'll just say my dad shot himself. He was very troubled and was in a lot of pain and had a lot of health issues. So 3 years ago, my dad shot himself. And on the anniversary of his death, there was a quote in the book that just spoke to me. And she says, one time I saw a tiny Joshua tree sapling growing not too far from the old tree.
Do you want me to read?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One time, I saw a tiny Joshua sapling growing not too far from the old tree. I wanted to dig it up and replant it near our house. I told Mom that I would protect it from the wind and water, and I would water it every day so that it could grow nice and tall and straight. Mom frowned at me. You'd be destroying what makes it special, she said. It's the Joshua tree's struggle that gives it its beauty. Oh. So is that you or is that your dad?
It's both of us. Oh. It's how we relate, right?
Yeah.
I'm the little one next to the big one. And I think that everything I went through with my dad made me tough. It made me compassionate. It made me self-sufficient. It made me appreciate my mother. Before I read that, I didn't have an appreciation necessarily for what he went through and how far he'd come to be able to raise me. without the same type of abuse that he suffered.
Yes.
Right?
In his mind, he was winning.
He was the best dad ever compared to his own father, right?
Yeah.
So, many years ago, I worked on The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, and Jeanette Walls met Craig at a book fair when they were both speaking together, and he invited her on the show. So I told one of the producers that, oh my God, she's my favorite author. Her book changed my life. Because after I read that book, I really, really got into a place of forgiveness for him. It was the catalyst that launched me to just really deep dive into that relationship and get a lot of healing and growth from that. And she said, oh my God, you should meet her. She's so nice. And I said, no, don't let me meet her. I will lose it. And she goes, oh, stop. Like,
no,
she didn't know. She didn't know my fucking backstory. And so literally after her segment, she's done taping with Craig, she comes around to that control booth where I'm in, and she opens the door and she goes, this is Jeanette. I told her about you. She wants to meet you.
Which is so sweet.
Which, my heart, right? And I get up and I go outside and I'm shaking. And mind you, like, we've had every celebrity in the universe on The Late Late Show. Like,
you wouldn't recognize this
Tom
woman
Cruise
if she was
has
walking down
been
the
there.
street.
Tom Hanks has been, like, right? Like, I've never once in 26 years in television been starstruck by anybody. And then this author comes and I am just like, and so I go out in the hallway and she just has this big warm smile and these kind eyes. And I say to her, I just want you to know that your book was a catalyst for so much healing and change in my life. And I said, your dad and my dad should go have lunch because we have a very similar dynamic and a very similar relationship. And until I read your book, I did not know that you could simultaneously love and be disappointed in someone at the same time. And as I'm saying this, I like burst into tears and I am boohoo crying. I am ugly crying. And Lisa, the producer, is looking at me like, what are you doing to my guest? And
this is inappropriate.
Yes. And Jeanette Walls just grabs me and bear hugs me.
I love that.
And like rubs my back. And she says, you are the exact reason I wrote my story.
Oh.
And
tears to my eyes.
Sobbed. And I finally pull back from her and she's crying and I'm crying. And it was just like one of the
Hopefully
best.
The producer was crying at that point.
The producer was just like shell shocked. And I was just like, holy shit, this is a big moment for me, where I just literally got to the point where I realized he did the very best job he could. And even if he didn't show it to me, he showed enough love to my mother that he gave her a really happy life. Yeah. And he showed enough love to my sister that he gave her a really happy life. Like, this motherfucker's making waffles and shit for my sister, okay? Like, he makes her coffee. He would wake her gently 3 times because she was a late sleeper. He would have her breakfast on the table. I had a lot of healing to do over this, I'm just gonna say. And it still gets brought up when I'm a little drinky. But God bless my poor sister. She didn't fucking know, you know?
Yeah.
And so anyway, I really did a lot of work on that. I went to a lot of therapy after this. And I realized that someone so damaged does not have the ability to love in a way they've never experienced before. Yeah. And I think it was my mother's love for him over all of those years, through all of his faults and drug abuse and in work and out of work, and her loving him through all of that. I think my mother taught my father how to love. And I was just a little too early to the party.
To me, part of growing up and forgiving our parents, especially once you've become a parent, is realizing that most of the time people are just doing the very best they can.
Yes.
As parents.
And when your only lens is through a child's eyes, you can't really see that.
No.
But you're right. When you become a parent, you realize how difficult it is.
Or just an adult and stop seeing, you know, and I'm not talking about horrible abuse and that kind of thing, obviously.
That's different.
But even then, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, forgiveness is personal. It has to.
Yeah, whatever you feel like you need to forgive or whatever you feel like hurt you, it's big.
Yeah, it's very big. But I was really happy to see you as your friend come to a place of forgiveness for your dad, because he was just, he never healed that little boy. That little boy who was stealing milk and clothes off a clothesline lived inside him and made all of his decisions for the rest of his days.
Yes, I agree.
So he never healed past that. He didn't have anybody to help him heal past. And your mom just loved him, but, she's not his therapist, right. So that's pretty powerful. And
so talk about your experience.
But I just want to say...
Talk about your forgiveness journey.
I want to say first, one more thing I want to say to you, though, is that there's a forgiveness healing thing that I've done, and I know you've done it, where you go back to that wounded person. And as an adult, like, you go in your mind, you find them. Wherever your hurt place is, and where it's sitting on your bed eating Cheetos. Wherever it is. Right? We all have that place. For me, it's sitting on my bed looking at a card my dad gave me. And you, as an adult, you go in there and you sit down with that kid and you say, I've got this now. You didn't do anything wrong. I love you. You are fine, and I'm here now. Because you don't want to let that little wounded child make your decisions for the rest of your days. So you did that.
Yeah, it's a powerful therapy tool. People think it's silly, and I felt silly doing it, But I remember having that conversation, that little girl who would just, be alone in a room all the time.
Yeah.
Eating.
Yeah.
That was my one, comfort.
Yeah. And so that's big. That's big.
She was driving the bus for a long time.
Yeah. I feel that so hard. I think most everybody is walking around with some kind of wounded child, and whether you've addressed that or not, I mean, it's corny. I don't give a shit. It's the truth.
Yeah, it helped. So there.
It's the truth. My forgiveness journey, I'm not as much in a place of forgiveness as Vanessa. When I was young, and I've alluded to this a couple of times if you've listened to past episodes. So growing up, my parents were divorced, and my sister moved away right when she got out of school. She moved to England. She was like later loser. She wanted out of the house. She was always just a vagabond and wanted to be crazy and live her life and do her thing. So there was a person that lived in our home for a while, a man, and my mom, was working 2 jobs. She was a single mom. She was trying to make ends meet. This person lived with us for several years, many, many years actually. And my mom was gone a lot. And starting, I don't know, when I was probably 14, I would say, I blocked a lot of it out. But it wasn't, so anyway, what would happen was I would be taking a shower, I would be getting dressed to go to school, I would be getting dressed, well, it wasn't usually school because my mom was there, but anyway, I was changing clothes. There became a pattern that lasted for very many, many, many years, where this person would suddenly need to have a conversation with me when I was in a place where, as a budding young woman, that's my private time. My boobs are coming out and I don't want to be naked in front of somebody. And he always made it a point to be wherever I was, when I was changing, when I was showering, it was a voyeurism situation. And it went on for many years, probably, I don't know, 5 years, 4 or 5 or 6 years. And this person came and went. Probably the most damaging part of it for me was the mental mind fuckery that went around with that lasted, that really stayed with me for years and years and years, was every time I would object, because as a young woman, it felt wrong.
But you didn't have the vocabulary.
It doesn't feel right.
Or the life experience to know that how it was
why
wrong.
It's wrong. And when I would object, the mantra became, you're so uptight. What's wrong with you? Why are you so prude? Lighten up. It's just me. Don't be, it's just your body. Like, it's just nudity. Why don't be, so there was a lot of prudishness. I'm uptight. I'm 14.
So you're shamed.
So I wondered what was wrong with me for not being comfortable with that. And it would only happen when we were alone in the home. And it's really funny because how things come out, like in my high school years, in my early 20s, when I met you, I partied like a maniac.
You did.
But I was not a straight A student. I'd like to say I was, but I was a good student. I held down a job. I had lots of friends. So there was no, because of course my mom, once this all came out many, many years later, my mom felt a tremendous amount of guilt. And I said, but how would you have known? On the outside, I was doing fine. And honestly, I buried this situation. I didn't know it was wrong. And so what I started doing as a defense mechanism was just picking fights with this person. Because when I would fight with this person, they would leave me alone. And I would remember, as I went through therapy, there would be the knock on the door, I want to make up. And normally, a makeup session, that's good, right? I dreaded it. Every time that knock would come on the door, let's make up, let's be friends now. I knew it was going to happen again within a couple of days. It was awful. And but again, I was just surviving that. I was drinking a lot. I was partying a lot, but it was all under the guise of, we're having fun, right? I mean, and I was having fun, don't get me wrong, but I look back now. I mean, I went to my 30th high school reunion and I didn't want to get heavy with my close set of girlfriends who had no idea any of this was going on. None of my core group of girls, because I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And later they were kind of teasing me, ribbing me about what a big drinker I was and what a big party was. I said, well, I don't want to get into too much, but there was a lot of pain in my life and a lot of trauma happening, and I was really running from it. And they were just like, what? Because I was just like, perfect Erinn, everything's fine. Yeah. Here's the thing too. It's like, I didn't have enough of a relationship or care about this person enough to ever like dig deep into like you did with your dad. It was just, I was just literally...
You had no expectations of him in your life to fill a role.
Exactly. And I was just stuffing it down. So anyway, cut to... And it's funny because now when people talk about doubting people who have buried memories, it just makes me incredibly angry. Because literally, I had a big fight with my mom about him. And I was probably 22. And nothing had happened for a while. But I still had nothing ever nice to say about this person if he came up in conversation. And my mom was like, you were always just so mean to him. Like, what was your problem? And I just remember like freaking out. And I ran out of the house and I went and literally like a after school movie. I like went and sat on the beach. And I just sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. And it was like the court came out. And every fucking shitty thing every time he looked at me and he did touch me inappropriately, but it wasn't sexual, so I never thought of it as...
It was sexual.
But it wasn't,
you didn't know that
it wasn't physically sexual. There was no... So to me, what's the word I'm looking for? Sexual abuse, it meant something like, oh, he had sex with me, or he made me give him a blowjob. I didn't realize that sexual abuse... Molestation, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. I didn't realize that sexual molestation could be that. So as I sat there, all these memories came up and just flooded me. And I was just like... But what's funny is I still felt the need to protect my mom. I just couldn't
because she was still... your support system.
Yeah, I just couldn't bear...
She was still the most important person in your life.
To hurt her in that way, because I just knew it would wound her so badly. So that person was out of our life and wasn't an issue.
At what point?
Pretty soon after that. Pretty soon after my big epiphany.
And had you expressed it to your mom?
No.
Is that why he was gone? Or he just was gone for other reasons?
Yeah, he was just gone for other reasons.
Oh, okay.
So I just was like, well, we're done. Good. No, don't have to worry about that no more.
Period.
That's fine.
Don't have to talk about this ever again.
Right? And so I, went on to have unhealthy relationships with men. And it wasn't until I met my Skylar's dad that it came out for me that I was having, in intimate times with my partner, sex with my partner, and this person would pop into my head. And it was my first real grown-up relationship. It's so funny that you cried. I thought I was going to cry.
I know. I can't believe I cried and you didn't cry.
Well, you know what it is?
Because you've mentally prepared yourself for this shit for a long time, and I haven't thought once about it.
Yes. When I was preparing Vanessa and I do a big division of labor. I love research and I love writing. So oftentimes I will cobble together a script that we follow very loosely. But as I was preparing for this, oh my God, so much stuff came up for me. It was crazy. I was in a fucking funk for days. And this is something I put in behind me for 20 years. But I did find out about 10 years ago that this person has horrible glaucoma and has gone blind.
Isn't that fucking poetic justice?
Wow. And here's what's crazy is about forgiveness is that it is not, for me, it's not a one-time deal. Processing what happened to me, and when I say forgiveness, I don't mean like, hey, it's fine what you did to me. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I am not going to let this rule my life. I'm letting this go, and I choose to see that you are a damaged human being who did damaging things to me, but I'm not going to take that with me, and I'm going to grow from this.
I'm not going to let you ruin my life.
Indeed, exactly. But that has not been a one-time shot. It's been a progress. So when I found out he was going blind, I just got pissed. I was so happy and so full of rage. Like, I felt like, I don't know how to describe it. I was like, ah! I was just it just brought up so much stuff for me. It was crazy. And so then when I was preparing for this episode, I called my mom and I said, I'm really afraid to talk to you about this. And this is the part that'll make me cry because my mom is just so sweet. And what I think after my mom and I had this conversation where she's like, you need to talk about this and you need to say whatever you need to say. And if I hear things that hurt me, I'm a big girl. I can handle it. Like, how beautiful is that? Like, how amazing, right?
She is amazing.
She's such a role model for just putting on her big girl pants and saying, I respect your journey. And I'm like,
and you should let them know that you did have a conversation with her about this previously.
Yes.
Like, this is not new information.
Oh, no. Sorry if I made it seem that way. She and I have worked through this. It's been something that came out probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago, but it's an uncomfortable situation. It's not we talk about it at Thanksgiving.
No, fuck no.
So when I was preparing for this, I wanted to honor my mother's journey and her special place in my life. And I wanted her to know that there's no part of me that holds her responsible for this. None. Zero. But I also know that as a parent, if something happened to my child, I would 100% definitely take responsibility for it.
Totally.
So I get it.
Yeah.
And I just was like, Mom, I don't blame you. And so just having that conversation with her that was so loving and so open, really, I had laid there in bed that night, and we were supposed to record this a couple weeks ago. I was really just felt a sense of release of this person. But I don't know if that's forgiveness.
That's a really valid point. I don't necessarily know that I forgive my father 100% of the time. When I'm in my well-rested, reading my literature that makes me a better person, when I'm in self-help mode and I'm meditating and I'm taking really good care of myself, I am evolved as shit. But when I'm overworked and I'm stressed and I'm tired, I get rageful about that.
And that's what I'm saying, though.
So it's really, you're right. It's
that
a process.
Letting go is a process.
It's constantly reminding myself of who I am and who he is. And I can legitimately say that because I feel like I was dealt a little bit of a tough hand early on, I am far more empathetic to people.
Yes.
I am far more forgiving of people's faults and foibles. I am far more forgiving of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I can recognize what an incredible job my mother did navigating all of that. Because I have loved somebody who is maybe not the best for me, but you can't really help that. And especially once kids come into the mix, you got to do the best you can to make it work. And I saw that in my mother, and she worked really fucking hard to make a really good life for my sister and I, despite my dad's shortcomings.
Yeah. And I just feel like if you want to really forgive something that's happened to you that's traumatic, you can't do it without pain. You can't do it without being willing to feel pain 100%.
And so many people are afraid of that.
Oh my God, it's fucking terrifying. It's horrible.
It is.
But here's the good news.
But you come out the other side of it.
Bingo. But you don't know that until you've done it a bunch of times.
It's true. You have to experience pain over and over and over it again to, number one, not let it throw you off your game. When you're young and the first tragic thing in your life happens, I remember the first tragic thing in my life to happen as a young adult was my friend Sheila killing herself. And I never thought I was going to forgive myself for that. I thought I could have known. I thought I should have saved her. I was mad at myself for not reaching out. All of those things I beat myself up for forever. And then something else tragic happens. And you think about that and you realize that life happens and life is messy and some people's life is harder than other people's. And you have more and more experiences like this. And you learn from every single one of them to be better, do better, know more, care for those you love more, because time becomes precious.
One thing that kept me from being in a place of forgiveness is I'm really big on, why did this happen and what did I learn? I'm really big on that. I am. And it just really, the only thing, and I'm also big on, and I'm kind of jumping around, I'm sorry, is I'm also big on, oftentimes you are a part of a picture and you don't know what part you're actually playing for somebody else.
Yes.
So you don't see where the benefit is for you, but maybe, just maybe, your part in that, even if you were the wounded one, was a catalyst for somebody else. I don't feel that in my situation that this person, and I don't know this for sure, I don't feel that this person went on and found a better way to live. I don't believe that he has. I know a little bit about his life since then. But what I do know, and that was the hard part, that was what I was going to say before I digressed, was I couldn't figure out why. Why did this happen to me? What did it give me? Nothing. It fucked my life up for a long, long time. And I made stupid choices. I picked shitty relationships. I had horrible self-esteem. We talked about that in the sex episode. My 20s were a shit show. It was just completely ruined. Thanks a lot for nothing. But the one thing I have it's kind of like this little nugget that I hang on to, is that my pain that I carried around that no one knew about, I would say every single person on the planet is carrying something around. Every single one of us.
It absolutely makes you more cognizant of that.
Right?
Because I never presented myself as perfect. I think I do so more now at this age than I ever did in my youth. I'm real good at everything's fine. But and again, we've talked about this before, but being around 12-step rooms, like I spent a lot of time in AA rooms when I couldn't find an OA meeting, and hearing people who look so perfect and put together talk about what's really going on. It just shines a light that so many people are just carrying around these massive burdens, and they're just trying to make it through the day.
It's so true. Yeah. It's really sad.
Yeah. And that's why drivers don't upset me.
Yeah.
I don't know what you woke up to.
Yeah.
If this asshole who's cutting me off and screeching between traffic is about to get fired for being late to his job because his kid has OCD and wouldn't tie his fucking shoes, I don't know.
You don't know.
It's true.
And to me, that's just about my biggest mantra in my recent life has just been compassion, compassion, compassion. Because the more compassion I have for others, I'm not doing it for some altruistic reason. I mean, maybe, but honestly, I want to be nicer to myself.
Oh yeah.
And the nicer and more compassion I can be for others it makes it easier for me to like myself. So let's end with this, because this will be a good button. And we try to go through what we're going to talk about in the beginning. We often don't get there.
We don't get there.
What?
We realize this and we're sorry.
It's okay.
Thanks for hanging around if you still listen.
Yeah. What forgiveness isn't.
Ooh, this is big. Listen up.
You read them.
Oh,
Do it.
shit.
Read
Okay.
'em.
So here we go. This was like, ooh, when I read this. So what forgiveness isn't. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're pardoning or excusing the other person's actions.
That's big.
Nope. Forgiveness doesn't mean you need to tell the person that they're forgiven. You don't need to say, I forgive you. You don't need to say shit.
It's not about them.
Not about them. It's about you.
Yeah.
Forgiveness doesn't mean you shouldn't have any more feelings about the situation.
That's big.
As we've both established, that shit just lives there forever.
We got a lot of feelings.
We got a lot of feelings. Forgiveness doesn't mean there is nothing further to work out in the relationship or that everything's okay now.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, I forgive you for what you fucking did, but I'll cut a bitch if you do it again.
Or
still forgiveness.
I totally feel that statement 100%.
Right? Forgiveness doesn't mean you should forget it ever happened.
Can't.
Because
Can't. Can't.
If it works or it's a lesson. And don't forget lessons. Don't forget lessons. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to continue to include that person in your life.
Indeed.
How do we get to a place of forgiveness if we're not there yet, Erinn?
Okay. Well, let's see. I'm gonna truncate this. Let's see. Think about the incident that upset you, and accept that it happened. Accept how you felt about it and how it made you react. You have to acknowledge it first of all.
Oh,
and that was like for me stuffing.
You can't stuff.
And I did for a decade. I was
Believe me, bitch, it'll come out.
I was like a psychology article in Psychology Today about how I literally was like, this is not happening in my life. Now think about the other person. He or she is flawed because we all are as humans, and he or she probably acted from limited beliefs and a skewed frame of reference. That is not forgiveness. That part. No. That is, and I've said this to my kids.
It's recognizing who and what they are.
There was a person in my kid's life who I felt should have been kinder to my child. But what I said to Skylar was, I'm not saying that, I'm going to tell you something about this person. This person...
Oh God, it's not me, is it?
Don't be dumb.
Okay.
Don't be dumb. No. Yes, Vanessa, you've traumatized Skylar. No. This was somebody who I felt should have been a parental type of situation. Anyway, what I said to Skylar was, I'm not telling you so that you forgive this person, but I'm telling you this person's upbringing was so cold and so unloving and so full of fucked upness that they don't know how to love you the way you need to be loved. And I am not telling you...
I know who you're talking about.
Yes. And I'm not telling you this because you should be like, well, what they did doesn't hurt me. Of course it hurts you. But if you can just have that one little iota of like, oh, it's not about me. This is their pain. This is their pain that they are acting out on me.
That's the switch. That's when you flip that switch and you know that your pain is not
freedom.
About me. Oh, that's everything.
It's fucking freedom.
It's everything.
Finally, decide whether or not you want to talk to the person and tell them that you've forgiven them. If you decide not to express it directly, then do it on your own. Just say the words, I forgive you. And I honestly, as I am reading that, I'm getting so choked. I'm not there.
That's okay.
I'm not there.
You don't have to be.
And my mom wants me to write this person a letter and tell them everything.
Oh, I fully, wholeheartedly, 100%
mail
believe.
That. Oh, she wants me to mail it.
I think that would be so cathartic
because she knows their address. But they're blind. So
okay, so there's a theory that my sponsor in program told me called the fuck you letter. You can send it or not send it. But it's essentially, you write it under the guise of, I am not ever going to send this letter. No one will ever see this letter in the light of day. But it is every vitriolic, horrible, bad word I have ever wanted to say to this person. And that I don't, because I'm a lady and society doesn't let me say these mean words, or I'm scared, or it frightens me, or I'm not ready to express myself, or somebody might read it and find out about me. So what you do is you essentially take the time and the space to write this letter saying every fucking deep down dark thing that lives inside of you. And you either A, read it to someone else who doesn't know the person and will never see or meet them, or B, you light that shit on fire as soon as you're done.
And let me just say to anybody...
It's called a fuck you letter.
To anybody sitting out there who thinks, oh, that's silly. it's so crazy.
It's fucking magical.
Until you've done it, don't knock it. Because honestly, sometimes these things are like, well, that seems like a corny psychology or armchair psychology. I have done it, and I'm telling you, putting pen to paper in a safe place.
Don't fucking type that shit on a computer. It's not the same.
You could, but I've done both. And if that makes you feel great. But what I'm saying is something about just vomiting all that stuff inside of you and literally like just getting it out of you. It's incredibly powerful.
It is. I've probably done 4 in my life, and they have made a difference every single time.
Sometimes when something's inside your brain is so wackadoo and so complicated that it just muddles everything up. And something about getting it out of your brain, through your mouth, onto paper especially, but even to another person, it just suddenly makes it clear, and the waters become clearer, and you don't feel as muddied. And sometimes, have you ever said something that you're so angry, and then you say it, and you're like, wow, say it out loud. I feel kind of dumb. But I was pissed for weeks.
Yeah, that's happened. That's definitely happened. Like that's so healing to realize that, I'm being kind of dumb.
I don't know what it is.
No, but having Jackie was my sponsor, and having Jackie read my fuck you letter about my dad for the first time, like, that was like the first step for me in going, oh wow, he was so fucked up. Yeah. That was big. Wow. It really helped. And if anybody wants to read their fuck you letter to me or Erinn, we're here for it. We don't know you. We don't know your person.
I would be honored.
I would be honored too.
Honestly honored. All right. That was good.
That was long. Sorry, y'all.
Really long.
If you stayed here for it, we love you.
We'll be able to cut a lot of it out. We will. But honestly, you're right. If you stayed here for this, thank you. And
sorry, I got all weepy.
I'm sorry.
No, I just, sometimes other people's emotions, if you're not an emotional person, can make them really uncomfortable. Sorry if it triggered you.
Yeah. I thought I was going to boohoo like a baby.
I thought so too.
Yeah. I didn't. I did that in private. No, but honestly, just, we all have something to forgive, and we probably all have something that we'd like to be forgiven for. So just be nice to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Do it.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Salads now. Bye.